of liberty. Final thought.
So what? Yeah, just one last quick question, I promise. What about something, as I mentioned with taking a driving test, to be able to get a driver's license, you have to prove that you know how to operate the vehicle safely. What about something similar to that with owning a gun? Some kind of thing where you go to a range with a trained professional,
No.
you show that you know how to operate the gun, safely, know how to store it safely, things like that. Yet,
Yeah,
and then
so
once you pass that, you get some kind of card that allows you to buy a gun.
I
mean, it's all about protections. It's not about restricting rights.
On that, you might have some agreement with me. Because actually, the number one cause of errant gun deaths is accidental discharges. People that don't know what they're doing with their gun.
I understand.
And so I think that could be prevented through better training. So for that, I actually might have some middle ground.
Okay, I appreciate it. Hope you and your family had a blessed Easter. God
Thank
bless
you.
everyone. I don't think the people that commit these violent crimes should be able to buy guns and things like that. And I think we should have red flag laws in place to make sure that those violent criminals aren't getting guns.
Okay, so let's go. So tell me, in your perfect world, what would constitute a red flag?
Just things like, we can look into any kind of medication and things like that that can affect someone's...
That could be dangerous, right? That could be compromise. There's a lot of vets that come home from war and that are on a lot of medication. A lot of vets could have their weapons taken away.
Well, I'm not necessarily saying... Bless you. Bless you.
Thank you. It's the pollen or something. Thank you.
I'm not necessarily saying,
The exchange begins with a young questioner pressing Charlie on gun control, citing school shootings, red flag laws, and even a federal gun registry. Charlie wastes no time cutting to the core. Is gun ownership a right or a privilege? The stage is set for a tense back and forth as the student argues that regulations could save lives, while Charlie gears up to push back against government overreach. The audience senses sparks about to fly as liberty and safety collide head-on.
It's mainly to prevent, future shootings and things like that, and also, putting in place things like a federal registry so that we know, the types of guns that people have, and, it would just essentially be a federal registry that shows these are the guns that this person has, in case a cop has to go on something like a domestic call. That's the most dangerous call they can go on. So,
yeah, I could see you're coming after this from a good perspective. Let me ask one other question. What would you say is the ultimate and final purpose of the Second Amendment?
I think it's self-defense against a tyrannical government, which...
We agree. Sure, great. Keep going.
Well, but I think within the Second Amendment, it also implies that we have high regulations in the first four words.
Sort of.
Of it.
Well-regulated militia
Right.
actually meant well-armed, but that's a separate issue. But
Well, how do you know? You're interpreting what the Founding Fathers
Well,
put
they
in.
said it in the Federalist Papers, right? So it's not just me, but also in the Heller decision, in the 5-4 decision, that said that gun ownership was a right. This was a hotly debated thing.
But do you disagree? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Do you disagree with the idea of a federal registry like that?
Oh, without a doubt. The only
do?
reason you'd want to register the guns is if you want to confiscate them.
Well, or to make sure that people like officers of the law are protected and know what they're going into.
That's a good argument.
Right.
To your credit, I will try to make a better argument where the problem of the government knowing where every gun is would then lead itself towards mass confiscation. And I would agree with you, a well-armed citizenry is the greatest protectorate of liberty and freedom in this country.
The student doubles down, suggesting red flag laws, registries, and even using medication as a basis for restrictions. Charlie quickly turns the tables, pointing out the danger of stripping rights from veterans or creating a pathway for mass confiscation. The debate sharpens. Is a registry protection for police or a trapdoor for tyranny? With every answer, Charlie builds tension, hinting that once government knows where the guns are, freedom itself hangs in the balance.
Even though the Army has things like drones and tanks and things like that outarm, citizens that have
Yes and
just
no.
a handgun.
We've seen it in several instances where at least a citizen, that's a good argument, but I would say a little flawed, where the citizens are able to protect themselves in some ways. It's a much harder population to control.
I understand, but so you think a federal registry would infringe on the rights?
Potentially. I think there's no good argument, other than potential. I ascribe to the government bad motives and bad intentions when it wants to infringe more on these types of freedoms and liberties.
Well, I understand. I just personally don't see it as an infringement because, like we just said, and I think we agreed that owning a gun is a right. However,
Yes.
I think it was responsibilities. But also I wanted to ask, is voting a right or is that a privilege?
Well, it is a right, and that's so felons can get their rights back, right? And so,
Right.
but rights can be suspended or delayed, and we
Right,
both agree
but-
with that. So,
right,
for
but-
example, like somebody in prison doesn't get guns.
Right, no, of course.
Somebody in prison doesn't have the same free speech rights that you might
Right,
have.
but what's the first thing that you have to do if you want to vote in this country? You have to register, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a federal registration to be able to vote in this country. So why not, and we can agree that, keeping safe and, keeping our elections to where people who shouldn't vote aren't voting is, that's keeping America safe because we don't want people who
That's a fair
vote.
point. I would say there's there's a technical difference between a voter registration roll and a gun registration
Right, guns
roll.
are much more dangerous.
Well, also, but guns in many different ways, they would go after the guns a lot more than the voter registration roll.
Well, how do we know, though?
My worldview comes out of one in the 20th century, where almost every totalitarian government went after the guns first, and the confiscation of guns then leads into the erosion of freedom and liberty.
Charlie presses deeper, invoking history and warning that disarmament precedes tyranny. The student pushes back, likening a gun registry to voter registration. But Charlie slices the comparison apart. Ballots don't defend liberty, armed citizens do. He leans on 20th century lessons. Government seize guns first, freedoms vanish second. The clash intensifies, with Charlie granting credit for fair points but holding firm that liberty dies the moment citizens are catalogued like property.
Right, but wouldn't you say in the 20th century, as you just said, that the disparity between the technology that citizens had to protect themselves compared to what the military had, wouldn't you say that there was a much smaller disparity as opposed to what we see nowadays?
Somewhat. I think that's a fair point.
So,
I'm acknowledging that's a fair point.
okay.
But do you see my perspective as well?
No, I do
that,
understand.
That an armed citizenry, also it says shall not be infringed, so we have to kind of wrestle with those two things
Right, but
simultaneously.
so if it's just a semantics argument, then to that point,
Well, it's not. I mean, semantics is meaning. That's literally what the word means. But
right, but
so,
you're saying because it says shall not be infringed, we can't do anything. But
No,
does
I'm
that
saying,
mean
though, that
voting rights can be
I'm
infringed?
saying
Because it doesn't say it cannot be infringed.
I'm saying I err on the side that more government regulation around guns means that they'll try to take good people's guns away, which then results in less.
As the argument heats up, Charlie acknowledges the student's perspective but reasserts, the Second Amendment says shall not be infringed. His tone sharpens, more regulation equals less freedom. After a sponsor break, the debate roars back. The student claims fewer guns equal less danger. Charlie strikes hard with a real-world example, Houston versus Chicago. Same population, different laws, and Chicago, with stricter controls, has far more murders. Facts cut through theory as the crowd leans in.
I understand, but wouldn't you say that that more guns can potentially lead to more danger and less guns?
Yes
lead
and
to less
no.
danger?
I mean, there's plenty of evidence to show that states that have more. So, like, if you take Houston and Chicago, about comparable populations, Houston actually has warmer weather, which means potentially more gang violence. They have about half, if not even less, the amount of homicides per year than in Chicago. Chicago has much stricter gun laws than Houston, like incredibly strict gun laws.
I understand, but I'm also, I think part of what plays into that is the gun laws that are around those cities. They're a lot more lenient than those cities themselves. So I think, I'm not saying that's entirely the cause of it, but I'm saying
I've heard that my whole life, so yeah.
Right, but I'm basically just talking about preventing people that have committed crimes such as domestic violence. I know I mentioned Pam Bondi gave Mel Gibson his rights to purchase a gun again, even though he pled guilty to a battery domestic violence charge in 2011, and yet now he is able to purchase a gun again, which I disagree with because he committed a violent crime. I mean, do you disagree with that personally?
No, I mean, I don't know the details of the case, but I think I've met Mel Gibson. I think he should be able to own a gun. I mean, like
just off of speaking to him though, even though with his criminal history. And
I don't know all the details. Do I think that the idea of taking his rights away because of something that happened that I don't know all the details about 14 years ago?
He pled guilty to it though.
Again, I find that to be a little bit of an infringement on basic rights.
Even though he literally
Again, I don't know the details around that, but I guess we're getting to a place where, do you think anyone that's convicted of violent crime should be able to own guns again?
No, not at all.
Wow,
If they're committing a violent crime, absolutely not. I think we should protect people in America, which I think you.
The spotlight shifts to violent offenders. The student brings up Mel Gibson's restored rights after a domestic violence case, arguing criminals shouldn't own firearms. Charlie pushes back, stressing the permanence of rights and warning against lifetime punishments. The exchange grows sharp. Should past crimes forever strip liberty? The student demands safety. Charlie demands principle. The crowd feels the tension. Where's the line between second chances and safeguarding society?
Agree with, and I think that's how we protect America.
That's a balance. Are we going to really say the federal government is going to protect us from ourselves when it comes to guns?
No, I mean it's less about the federal government taking away guns and more just allowing them to protect their citizens. And it's not about getting rid of guns. I'm a gun owner myself. I go hunting.
No,
I was on a competitive
What
team.
state would you say has the gun laws that are the most appealing to your worldview?
I don't know specific state laws, if I'm being completely honest with you, but
something to think about.
But I'm speaking, even just the federal registry itself. I think that would protect, a lot of officers of the law. Like I said, when they go on domestic calls, that's the most dangerous call that an officer of the law can go on.
There's an informal registry, not a formal one. Just gun dealers are supposed to report.
Right, but do you really think that they do all the time, though?
No, of course not, obviously. I mean,
right,
I
so
live in
wouldn't the
reality.
federal registry eliminate that problem then?
Again, I would go back to a formal registry. You register in order to confiscate. It is a prerequisite towards confiscation.
Isn't that just a slippery slope argument, though? If you give one thing, then another thing's going to go?
It's a historical argument, right? We see that throughout totalitarian dictatorships throughout the 20th century, where if you want to take the weapons away, you first ask for a collection of all the items that you then want to collect. But I could see, you're coming after this in good faith. I tend to be on a much more libertarian side, even though I'm not libertarian, where we actually need looser gun laws, because I think that
gun laws?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, especially in states like Chicago and Illinois, where it's very basic Second Amendment rights. So I'll give you a great example.
Okay.
In a state like Rhode Island or New York,
right,
it could take a woman upwards of 30 days to get a gun. Mm-hmm. So let's say a man wants to actually do harm to her, and she gets threats and the police won't intervene. I think she should be able to get a gun that afternoon to protect herself.
I understand that.
So in that case, I think that gun laws should be looser.
The debate circles back to registries. The student insists they protect officers. Charlie insists registries are precursors to confiscation, backed by historical precedent. Then he pivots. America doesn't need tighter laws, it needs looser ones. With urgency, he paints the picture of a woman waiting 30 days in New York for protection, when danger could come tonight. His argument lands hard. Restrictive laws don't stop crime, they stop survival.
I understand.
I think
in that regard, I do agree with you.
Cool. So that would be an instance of that. And I also will go back to this idea of red flag laws. We have seen case after case of it being abused, of veterans having their weapons taken away because of fake accusations and, let's just say, faulty accusations, saying that they're mentally unbalanced, so on and so forth.
But do you think that they could investigate cases like that and see if there aren't any medications? I mean, a lot of these antidepressants can change your brain chemistry.
For sure. And some of it, though, is they take the guns away first and they ask questions after. It's a difficult, very, I don't want to say gray area, but edge part of the law, where I tend to, and a respectable position, respect to you, I tend to err on the side of it is a right, the government screws up more than it does correct in this specific portion, and the downside to having more guns is far better than the downside of having only the government have guns.
Even if that can cost.
Now the red flag debate intensifies. Charlie warns of abuse, veterans losing weapons over false accusations, guns seized before due process. The student appeals to mental health checks and medication risks, but Charlie stands firm, government blunders more than it protects. He closes this round with a stark contrast. The downside of more guns pales compared to the nightmare of only the government holding them. The audience hears a chilling warning wrapped in resolve.
American lives, though? I mean, me personally, I would give up all of my guns in a heartbeat if I knew for a fact that it was going to save one life.
Can I do a thought experiment to you?
Sure.
So, do you think we should ban driving?
No, I don't think so. And I know where you're going with this.
55,000 people a year die from car accidents, right?
Right, so absolutely. But those are accidents, though. That's not someone intentionally going and killing somebody. Well, that's not true. Some people intentionally do, or some people have DUIs, right? Some of it is an act of agency, not just accidents, right? Meaning that they are reckless with the technology. I understand.
You would agree a DUI is a reckless act.
Oh, for sure.
And that's a vast majority of auto deaths,
right,
both in the interior of the vehicle and the exterior.
Right, but then what do you have to do to be able to drive, though? You have to get a driver's license. You have to take a test with an instructor.
No, of course, but I'm saying if the pursuit of to save, if it's all about saving lives, then there are certain things that we'd get rid of. I would say, though, that government is not merely there for our safety. It's one of the primary focuses. You have to balance liberty and safety. And that's a tough balance at times. I fall on this issue on the side.
The student appeals to emotion, saying he'd surrender his guns if it meant saving just one life. Charlie counters with a sharp thought experiment. Should we ban cars, since 55,000 die annually in crashes? The crowd feels the punch. Liberty requires risk. He stresses balance. Government's role is not pure safety, but to safeguard freedom. In this tug-of-war, Charlie anchors firmly on liberty, making the student's emotional plea feel noble yet impractical.
Of liberty. Final thought.
So what? Yeah, just one last quick question, I promise. What about something, as I mentioned, with taking a driving test to be able to get a driver's license, you have to prove that you know how to operate the vehicle safely. What about something similar to that with owning a gun? Some kind of thing where you go to a range with a trained professional, you show that you know how to operate the gun, safely, know how to store it safely, things like that. Yet, and then once you pass that, you get some kind of card that allows you to buy a gun. I mean, it's all
think
about
that,
protections. It's not about
yes,
restricting
on
rights.
that, you might have some agreement with me. Because actually, the number one cause of errant gun deaths is accidental discharges. People that don't know what they're doing with their gun.
I understand.
And so I think that could be prevented through better training. So for that, I actually might have some middle ground.
Okay, I appreciate it. Hope you and your family had a blessed Easter. God
Thank
bless
you.
everybody.
In a surprising twist, the student proposes mandatory training, like a driving test for gun ownership. This time, Charlie shows rare openness, acknowledging accidental discharges as a real danger. For once, middle ground appears, better training without stricter laws. The debate ends on a softer note, mutual respect shining through. After an intense clash of principles, both sides leave with something, the crowd witnessing not just conflict, but a rare glimpse of consensus.